Good morning again, Tuesday morning. Get your notebooks out. The neighbours going off won't upset us too much. Where we are today is Jane. Jane is off to get herself pregnant. Ooh, you must be late. She's not so much trying to get pregnant, but she does have a definite intention to go off and get herself a damn good seeing to. Why? Well, I'm going to come up with a couple of reasons, but I mean, it can be readily understood that these reasons that I'm going to give are simplified examples and stand-ins for what is really Jane's life, everything about it, right up until that point. But a couple of reasons which might be major factors in the fact that she wants to go off and get herself a damn good seeing to. Right, so she's had an argument with her father and she's going off. She often has arguments with her father. Her father's not had an easy life. When he was young, he was held back on the farm by his father instead of going to school a lot of the time. And so much of the time that her father found that he was well behind his age group and any group of what could be potentially friends in learning, and he never really took up with any friends because of that, and the fact that he was learning what he was learning on the farm and didn't get to meet many people down in the town. And he developed into being what could be called a very shy man. Jane's mother died giving birth to Jane, and things were difficult, always were difficult. And now Jane's become of an age where she's even more difficult and coming up with things that he really doesn't know how to talk to her about things. So he could have told her more about the birds and the bees, but he didn't, because he was embarrassed, because he was shy, and knew that Jane would basically use it as a tool to torment him. He knew enough about girls and what age she was, and he could have threatened her with violence, told her he'd knock her fucking head off if she got herself knocked up by any of the local boys. He wasn't adverse to threatening her with violence and even doing violence on her, but he didn't want to get to that part of getting knocked up by any of the local boys, because he knew the little bitch would ask him, what does being knocked up mean, Pa? So he didn't. And many other things happened. And now Jane's going off to get Joe to give her a damn good seeing to. And Joe, who's not particularly happy at home either, thinks it'd be an excellent idea to meet up with Jane and get rid of some of his aggression by giving somebody a damn good seeing to. Now, it's my story, so I can make it end how I like. If I want to say that they're going to create the eldest of many children that they're going to have, and they get married and have a happily ever after life together, then that's how it is. Because we can come to the question of the questions, the could, would, should type questions. Which way round should we do them? Should. Should they get together that night and make babies? That kind of depends on me, doesn't it? How I end the story. Does it? I don't know. Or it depends on your priority pyramid and the morality that you've got going on in your head. Would it be better if they do live happily ever after? Or, let's face it, more likely that Jane gets pregnant and Joe dumps her and things get pretty bad? But we don't know the future. Joe and Jane don't know the future. So the should they do it, or should I say, it maybe would be better that they didn't do it. It's a bit of a moot point, isn't it, really? Because we don't know what the future is. We have our own moralities and whatever. But we don't really know. But most of us, being sensible kind of reasonable people, say that their chances are that they really shouldn't be getting it together at that young age, and things happen, and we know things like that rarely turn out well. Would it have made any better difference if Jane's father had told her about the birds and the bees? Probably not, because Jane had school friends and she knew enough about the birds and the bees. Not all the details of the technicalities of contraception and all that, but she knew enough. Would it be better if her father had told her that he'd knock her fucking head off if she got knocked up by any of the local boys? Now that could be a factor, because he'd normally threaten her with beating her black and blue. So if he threatened to knock her fucking head off, she would have known that this was a severe threat and would have had to have taken it to heart. And if she at that point didn't know what being knocked up meant, it would be best at that point to go to her friends and find out what being knocked up meant, and found out the details of the birds and the bees, and realised that if she did get herself pregnant, all fucking hell would break loose at home. But her father didn't tell her that, because he was shy and didn't want to talk about anything that the little bitch might have got him on, like being knocked up, and backed him into a corner of embarrassment. So he didn't, and she's gone off and got herself a good seeing to, and got herself knocked up by one of the local boys, our friend Joe, who for various reasons, he didn't know any better either. Basically they were young, stupid, nothing much more than children, who thought, both of them in their strange way, that they were putting one over on their parents by getting together and doing something that adults did. They were going to do an adult thing, and in the meantime they were going to be together and get a bit of closeness and loving with a different person outside the family. So the would things be different? I'm basically saying in this story, but it doesn't really matter. What I'm saying is their lives led up to that point. That night in the barn. Could, would, should, could. So that leaves us with the could. Could it have been any different? Could Jane have done any different? Could Joe have done any different? think that's it. Answers below.